Are you ready to grow your financial practice to heights you've never imagined? You're listening to the Elevated Advisor Podcast with your online business mentor and host, David Scranton. Each week, you'll learn Dave's secrets that have helped him become one of the most successful financial advisors in the country. So are you ready to become an elevated advisor? The Elevated Advisor Podcast starts now.
Do you work in your practice with your spouse or significant other? Have you ever worked in your practice with your spouse or significant other? Have you thought about working in the practice with your spouse or significant other? Or are you just smart enough to know that you never want to work in your practice with your spouse or significant other, but would like to be entertained for the next 30 minutes or so? Well, if you could answer yes to any of those four questions, then stay tuned to this week's episode of the Elevated Advisor Podcast. I'm David Scranton, your host, and you guessed it, today we're talking about what it's like to work in the business with your spouse or significant other. And to help me out on this also important topic are my two good friends here, Lindsey Cotter and Nathan Cox from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the owners of Retirement Income Solutions. In fact, I like to refer to you as Mr. and Mrs. Cotter, correct? That's usually how I refer to the two of you?
Generally, yes.
That's right.
Of course you do.
Now, it's interesting. You know that I can say a thing or two about working with your spouse or significant other, right? Because
Yes,
we've
you can.
been working together for 19 years, but it's a little different. We've got almost 60 people here at the company, and with almost 60 people, we kind of have corners to go to. We can hide. I can go to my corner. More often than not, she goes to her corner and hides, right? It actually works. But in a practice, you don't have quite as many people, and it's a little more difficult. So that's today. Talk about some of the challenges and some of the benefits of working together. But first of all, how long have you two been together on the personal level, and how'd you meet?
So we've been together around 6 or so years, I think
Okay.
officially.
We were together first
Yeah,
before we started our practice.
right.
And there's no corners to hide in, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If there were, I would have found them.
And you have how many people in your operation right now? 7 total?
7.
7? Yeah, so it's a little bit fewer corners to hide than certainly with 60 people. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you were together as a couple, maybe a year longer than you worked together. And you were both financial advisors in your own right when you met, correct?
Right, yes.
So again, you cannot avoid the question here on this particular show. So tell me, how'd you guys meet?
Yeah, so it actually goes way back, about 17 years ago. I used to schedule appointments for him when he was an advisor.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we originally met.
But there was about an 11-year lag between that time and then the time, you were together. So meanwhile, you became a financial advisor on your own.
Correct.
And you two weren't together.
No.
You're probably out of touch for the most part for a while
Oh,
with each other,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And then how'd you reunite?
We actually worked for the same IMO. We had the same IMO that we operated out of for a little while, and that's where we kind of reconnected. And so, like I said, Lindsey became an advisor and had her own practice, and I had my own practice. And after we became a couple, we reunited, and really around a common goal of our practices in common. And talking about some of the struggles that were involved and some of the challenges with, being in the financial services industry, I guess you could say, and just reconnected because of that common ground.
Definitely.
And then
We had a lot
decided
of the same vision too, really, also.
absolutely, and they decided to merge our practices together into one, which is always interesting. It's
Yes, it is.
never a dull moment.
Yes, it is. And of course, I know you have children, separately, but now, of course, you have a little boy of yours together, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And
Riker.
he's cute as anything.
Yes, he is.
And he has a favorite uncle, right? Who's his favorite uncle?
Uncle Dave, of course.
Uncle Dave, that's right. Favorite Uncle Dave.
Yes.
That's exactly what he calls you too.
So you merge practices, and by the way, it's kind of interesting because what you're going to learn in a little while is that Lindsey also is taking on different roles now in the office out of necessity, less as a financial advisor, more in running operations, which is, hopefully a temporary thing, but it's out of necessity. So you get a little bit of a flavor today with if you're merging as both advisors or whether, maybe one person's an advisor and the other person's in the role of a support staff person. You get a feeling for both. So when you merge the practices, how did that go?
Quickly.
Very quickly.
Quickly, okay.
Very quickly. We started off small. It was the two of us and then one staff person that we brought on. And then we just started growing from there.
And that was about 4 years ago?
2018.
Yeah. And now you've got 7 people total.
Exactly.
So you've grown pretty rapidly, for sure. And I know you're bringing in, I think you guys mentioned you're bringing in maybe about $10 million a year of total business back in 2018. And last year you broke, what, over 40 million together? Is that right?
Yeah, 45.
45 million of total business.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. So let's fast forward then. What did you try as advisors working together? Did you try working your own leads in parallel? And then I know you tried a little bit working tandem, where one's the opener, one's the closer. Talk to us about that. Why'd you try it? What worked better?
Yeah, so we started off where we were just trying to run our own appointments in tandem, where we were both doing everything for our leads, and quickly realized that we were missing a couple components of our practice. So then Nathan was the one that continued to run in by himself, and I kind of picked up a little on the operations side at that point.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But then you tried a point where you did some work with not running just parallel paths, but you for a while where you were the opener, and
Yes.
then you punt people to Nathan, and Nathan was the hammer, right? He was the closer.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So how did that go?
By far my favorite system.
Mine too, really.
Yeah.
Mine too, really. I mean, it worked out really well.
You could say things about him to build him up in a way that he can't say about himself, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And all true things.
Yeah.
All true
Of
things.
course they
Yeah,
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they said that after 6 years. Let's wait another decade and see if they say that.
We'll check in about 10 years.
Well, that was the most beautiful part, because that was actually a suggestion that Lindsey had. Is she said, "Look, why don't I just take the first appointments? You continue to do the educational events and the marketing events, and I'll take the first appointments, and I'll kind of help you weed some people out if necessary, and really kind of do some of the groundwork per se, and then." If it makes sense for them to get back on your schedule, then I'll put them on your schedule, and you can take it from there. And that is by far my favorite way of doing it, because she's really good at, like you said earlier, Dave, elevating me to a certain point where, who better to ask?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if a client is trying to get to know you, what better person to ask, than my better half, I guess you could say.
And isn't it cool too? More often than not, I find that people love a family business, right? They love that story. It's a good. You find the story itself helps you.
I think so.
Yeah, we're a little bit unique, I would say. I don't think we're all that unique in the industry, but in our area, definitely. Yeah. I think we're a little bit unique. We're both actually investment advisors, so I think that's a little bit different.
So, Lindsey, I know you got pulled into like a little bit of running the business, and now running the business even more. Right. And why did that happen? Why did you feel a necessity to get in there yourself and run the business?
Yeah. So
beside the fact that Nathan wouldn't have a clue how to do it, so he
that's the first thing.
With that box checked, of course. I just felt that instead of both of us running in a hamster wheel, that it really made a lot of sense for us to find solid footing for the time being. So I felt that I was most suited to run the operations, and Nathan being as he took on the second and so on appointments, that it just made sense naturally for him to do that and for me to do the operations.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And not to mention, technology is Nathan's worst enemy. So, it was naturally fitting.
That's why Nathan and I
This
are
is true.
like brothers from another mother.
Yes.
To get him away from using his legal pad, I had to pry it from him. We were in the office, just tug of war to get that legal pad out of his hands. So here we are.
I still like my yellow legal pad. I'm just letting that be known.
And of course, now the challenge though with running operations is that sometimes employees can feel like they're being ganged up on, right?
Definitely.
So you got the dynamic of, no matter how you slice it or how nice you are, you're still viewed as the quote wifey, right? So
Yes.
you've always got that a little bit. So how's that affected you, and how have you worked around that? How have you worked to try to make that your advantage more recently than maybe in the past where people are more standoffish?
You know, that was a big challenge for me because they do feel very ganged up on. They feel that if there is an issue and they come to me, that I'm just going to go run and tell him immediately. So I just really, I tried many things that didn't work, but what I tried was just transparency with my staff and just being very transparent with them and explaining to them that they can come to me and whatever the issue may be, and we would take care of it. And just constantly breaking that wall down with them and proving to them, you know, because you can say it all day long, but actually proving it to them and showing them that that's how it's going to be on a consistent basis, I think really broke those walls down, and now that's not an issue anymore.
Now tell us about, you know, the most recent change you've made between good cop and bad cop, where traditionally Nathan's running around with his hair on fire with 8 to 10 client meetings a day. So, you know, Lindsey was the bad cop, right? Where
Yes.
they'd come to you and you'd say, no, you can't do this, or you have to do it this way. And then they go to Nathan, they can't get the answer they want from mom, they go to dad. So dad would then say, well, sure, yeah, whatever you want, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And
In
run
between
into the next
appointments.
meeting, that's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Catch me between meetings, and I'll just, they know. It's like,
Right.
okay, yeah, just, I'll give them whatever answer that they want to hear in the moment.
You had the bad cop and the good cop, but how did that change
Absolutely.
recently, and how's that working out?
Yeah, so that changed recently out of definitely a necessity and to stop feeling insane by doing the same thing over and over again. And so we're working on our culture in our office, and I wanted to make that shift where, and also for personal growth's sake for myself, where I wanted to be the good cop. And so Nathan has now taken the role of the bad cop, and it's actually quite refreshing. I've fallen into that role quite nicely, and the results are phenomenal. You know, because he cannot be the good cop with just being caught in between appointments, you know, with just a sliver of time in between appointments, or in fact, a lot of them would stand outside of the restroom waiting for him because they wanted that answer.
I've had them follow me into the restroom.
This is
trying
true.
to get questions answered. So that's
true.
even.
And the, the staff is great. They're
They are
trying
great,
to
yes.
accomplish something, and they're trying to get the answers that they want, and I get that, but it wasn't working. So we learned from trial and error there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is working out beautifully.
Yeah.
It is.
And
yeah.
you know, being the bad cop's kind of my natural environment anyway, so it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's great because then it's real simple. You're a man of a few words, and we just can't have it. We need to fix this immediately, and it's great for you to come back and say, "Look, we need to get this fixed by Friday," because I don't want to have to tell Nathan this isn't fixed. We got to work together to get this done.
Exactly.
And you're part of the team, and it's easier now. I have to imagine when we had one other employee, that employee felt like they were ganged up on, right? Because there's 2 of you, 1 of them.
Right.
But now there's 2 of you, 5 of them.
Yes.
And that makes it a little fairer playing field. That also has got to help too as you grow. That it kind of waters down that pressure that they might feel by the 2 of you being a couple.
Well, I think it's also important to make sure that the staff understands each person's role,
Yes.
because you know, a lot of wives, and Lindsey, you could probably relate to this, a lot of wives who are in business with their husbands may be a victim of this wifey
Yeah.
stigma,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But our staff understands that we are very equal partners in this business, and we have equal roles. We may be doing different things at different times, but we are very equal when it comes to the business and the operations and what we bring to the business. And they understand that. They understand that. And then when she and I sit down and have a conversation, even if we don't agree on something, and we don't let the staff see it a lot of times that we don't
Absolutely.
agree,
Right.
but we ultimately have the same goal one way or the other. We both want to see the business succeed. So that's really, really neat. And I didn't really recognize that right off the bat. But, you know, even when we're having a bad day, things don't go
Come on, you
as
guys have bad
planned.
days, really?
Every once in a while.
Really? Seriously?
Even if you're having a bad day and things don't go as planned and it's a little bit stressful, you know, and maybe we're not agreeing on something, which, believe it or not, we don't always agree on everything. We know that there's still that common ultimate goal that ties us together.
And I think too, Lindsey, where you earn respect from the team too, is you're coming in as an advisor. So that gives you some respect. But, and I want to talk at some point about, how you keep church and state separate, like when you go home, and how you work on that, because that's always a challenge for couples. I know that personally. But I think I mentioned, I think I told you guys about, it's literally 5:30 in the morning, lying in bed, on my back, and just eyes closed, feeling like something just wasn't right. And I open my eyes, and Teresa looks at me and goes, "Oh, good, you're awake. Well, I've got to talk to you about something at work," and I wasn't awake, right? So it's hard
She's been up for 2 hours thinking about it.
That's right. So it's hard to separate it that way. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the emotional side, because here's the thing. And I know eventually you guys are growing. You've got 3 offices now. You're going to have 4 in not too long a period of time. And you're going to need a full-fledged operations person, which is what's going to liberate you, Lindsey, to get back in the field doing what you love, right? So I know that. But one of the things that's difficult is that because it's your business, and even if you didn't own half, even if it was all Nathan's, it's still your business, right? Because it's your family's business.
Exactly.
So one of the toughest things I find a lot of times is for the spouse that's involved in the business, whether it's as an advisor or running operations, is that they get more emotionally attached. So you tend to get frustrated when things don't go the way you want, more than maybe an outside operations person would.
Yes.
So how do you handle that? How do you handle the inside game? Because that's natural. That happens with just about anybody who's got their spouse or significant other active in the business.
Right. Yeah, that for me was really challenging, which is where I naturally fell into that bad cop role, because it was the passion, and I just wanted the business to succeed. So I was very emotionally attached to the business.
Protective mother bear.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
That's about what that was.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. That's normal. That's very
sure
normal.
it is.
Yeah. So that was a struggle that I dealt with for quite some time, and then just by a lot of communication with Nathan and I, because the way it appeared to the staff was that I was attacking them.
Right.
I was attacking them specifically, and so I had to really do some soul searching and reflecting on how I wanted that to be and how I was going to internally fix that and not get so outwardly emotional about things and be more logical and strategic about things.
Well, I think the conversation that you and I had, if you remember back, because that wasn't that long ago that we kind of revisited that, because it's really easy to fall into that trap of being emotional in your business. And what we talked about is everyone knows that investing emotionally is not a good thing.
True.
Emotional investing is bad news, right? Running a business is no different. You've got to be able to remove the emotion from the business. It's just business.
Yes.
And you and I were talking about that and kind of giving that as a reference point, because you as an advisor admitted, you said, look, emotional investing is terrible. It's a bad deal.
Right.
So why am I doing this? Why am I bringing the emotion into it? And it's difficult, though.
And that's when you discovered API.
Yes.
Assume positive intent. Yes. That's right.
Yes, assume positive intent. It's been life-changing.
Because it's easy to think, again, how do you feel when in any part of your life, personal or business, you feel like somebody's taking advantage of Nathan? You want to kill him, right?
Immediately, just to the jugular.
That's right. That's right. And that's why when you immediately think, oh, somebody's being lazy, or they don't care about the business, or they're just taking advantage, then it's easy to have that, that anger. But if you just assume, hey, they have positive intent, there's some reason they did what they did, even though I might think it's the dumbest thing in the world, right? At the moment,
yes,
there's got to be a positive intent. Now you take a deep breath, and allows you to have more positive resources to handle that situation.
Absolutely. And really, it's just asking them why, having a conversation with them and understanding why they did it from their point of view. And a lot of times we can course correct things, or maybe there was a misunderstanding inside of that. So that has been life-changing in our business, the API.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. So that's business. Let's talk about the personal side now. Okay. You guys are really, really good at just drawing a line, right? And when you go home, you never talk about business. Is that correct?
I wish. It's difficult. It's very difficult. If it's not one of us doing it, it's the other.
Exactly.
Depends on what's going on at the time, and anyone who runs a business this way can relate to this. Dave, I'm sure you said earlier you can relate to it. Lindsey and Teresa are very similar in that area where, sometimes Lindsey will get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and she's just itching for me to wake up. She wants me to wake up, and because she's got 16 things to tell me about 14 different emails that she read right before she went to bed.
And you are up. You're just faking sleep, right? Because you don't want to have the conversation.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm up to his game already.
My eyes closed and hoping it will go away.
Faking a snore occasionally.
But we've learned. You have to learn. I think it's very important, and like I said, it's not just one or the other when it comes to us. Is on a Saturday, and Lindsey's trying to enjoy our son, and they're outside and doing an activity, and I take a phone call and get all worked up about something, and all of a sudden I've got to tell her about it and vent a little bit sometimes. And sometimes you just have to draw a line. You just have to say, you know what? Personal life and home life is home life, and work life is work life. And you have to draw a line in the sand and just say, you know what? We're just not going to do it today. We're not going to do it this weekend. We're not going to do it today. We're not going to do it over Christmas break. And we're not going to do it when we're on vacation. And just make a goal just to be.
And we don't always hit that goal.
No.
But having that conversation that we're both wanting to accomplish that is very important. And sometimes we fall short of that goal where we want to be proactive instead of reactive in things. And so what we do is we fall short and we remind each other, hey, this is vacation time, or this is the weekend time, we're having family time. And so it's not just one of us, it's really both of us. But it's a constant thing we deal with.
And now you each vent to each other on occasion. You're alluding to that earlier, right? So who's better being the recipient of the venting?
Lindsey.
Really? So when you vent, you can listen and receive it without taking ownership or getting as frustrated. But if you're listening and receiving it, it builds up in you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lindsey is by far the better listener, I can assure you.
Yeah.
When he's venting, I'm just making a mental checklist of all the things to get rid of that concern that he has, to take care of it and get it off of his plate.
But when you're so let's say, Lindsey, you're venting to him, and I'm going to do this because this is the male and female difference, right? Now you ever see Defending the Caveman, by the way?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
If you haven't seen Defending the Caveman, it's a play. It's a one-man play. And it's a skit all about the differences between men and women. And this thing is hysterical. So what you do is you go there with 3 or 4 couples, and you all just poke fun at each other. It's hysterical. I've seen it twice. It's really cool.
Okay.
And so Defending the Caveman, in fact, it was at Helen Hayes Theater in New York for years, I think, and then it moved on. But so let's say you're venting to Nathan.
Okay.
Trying to be as honest as you can with yourself. How often do you think it's because you want his input to solve the problem versus how often is it because you just want to vent, you want to be heard?
There's probably a 50-50 split.
Okay.
Probably right down the middle.
Now, does he do the typical guy thing and show up and he's Mr. Fix-It? So even if you just want to be heard, he's coming in with solutions as Mr. Fix-It. 'Cause that's a typical guy thing. Does he do that, or does he know when to differentiate one from the other?
Occasionally he does that, offer solutions. Sometimes he'll just say, quit whining about it and find a solution.
That's true.
I mean, we say that to each other, really.
But that's usually only after I've heard the same thing several times.
Over and over, yeah.
That's true.
So, we're
just in your household that
pulling out
happens. It
honesty
happens everywhere.
here. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that works a lot is I'll check in sometimes with Teresa. I said, okay, which Dave are you talking to? Are you talking to the husband or the owner of the company? Which one are you talking to? And then I know if it's the owner of the company, she's looking for a solution. She wants me to jump in and fix it, right? Yeah. If it's just me at home, then I know she just wants me to listen. And I do that a lot. I'll ask her, which Dave, just so we know, which Dave are you talking to right now? So you should try that sometime. It might work.
That's a good point. It's a great takeaway.
But I think more importantly, if Lindsey's looking for solutions, and I think one of the reasons she may be saying it's 50-50, what I've noticed that you do is when you're really looking for solutions, you're not really venting. I think you've become very good at distinguishing those two things, if that makes any sense. she'll just come to me and say, hey, look, I've got this problem. I need your help. What do I do about this? If she wants my help with something, she'll just be more direct about it, because just venting about something per se, I picture that as different, because we do that.
Well, when the conversation is more emotionally charged, then it turns into venting.
Sure.
Right.
So you could tell. So
I think that's your job, Dave. When she wants to vent, okay, that's where mentorship comes in. If she really wants to vent someone and she wants the solutions, I think she calls you.
Right here.
Yeah.
Here's the phone. Call Dave.
That's right.
Right.
And that has happened, actually.
That has happened. Yes.
Yeah. So now, how about this? Here's another couple thing that happens sometimes. You would have, whichever would have another advisor in the business, and there'd be a certain way that advisor that worked for you would talk to you. Okay, if it's an advisor who's an employee, right? Or maybe just a certain way an employee would talk to you. But are there times when you're in an office meeting, maybe with the team, and you're talking to each other, but maybe it's more of an emotional conversation that maybe wouldn't be acceptable if it were just an arm's length employee, but ends up being acceptable because you're together? Does that ever happen?
It has happened a couple of times, kind of in the infancy of our dynamic. And so we identified it very quickly and really just left that meeting and said, never again.
You need to be one unit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we did do that. We made the mistake, and that just will tear apart culture and promote things that we otherwise deem unacceptable in our practice.
Yeah, we put a stop to that immediately. We did catch ourselves doing that occasionally, and it's easy to do that when you have a small staff.
Yes.
If you've got one or two support staff in your office, and you're in a meeting and you're trying to get your staff together, and maybe we don't agree on something, and we kind of banter back and forth a little bit. That was just not. Yeah. We saw immediately the results of that, and that's just not going to work.
Exactly.
And we made the decision just to cut that out.
We cut that out, and we developed facial cues with each other. I mean, seriously, because
I'm sure nobody else in the office will pick up on.
No,
right?
no. Kind of, like baseball signs or something.
We have this tendency to read each other's mind at this point anyway.
Yeah.
So it's very subtle facial cues, and if I make the mistake of missing one, then I won't miss another one. I can assure you.
That's right. Yes. So just to have something in place to where we know, hey, this is going the wrong direction, course correct immediately, and it's worked really well for us. So
that's great. Of course, Nathan was a semi-pro baseball player, catcher. So the catchers, they've always got
our
the signs
under the desk.
That's right. That's
right.
Yeah. So okay, you got through that quickly. How much do you believe that being parents before being in the office helped you in this, and that concept of having a unified front?
I think it helped us recognize it faster, because that's a big deal with kids.
Yeah,
if you're parents, you got to have a unified front, or those kids are going to run all over you. We both coached. You coach soccer, I coach baseball. It doesn't matter if you're coaching, if you're parenting, if you have an assistant coach, you've got to have this unified front, and it's imperative when you have good quality staff people is to have be on the same, even if we don't agree.
Right. Yes.
Even if we don't agree, we will still act like we agree in the moment. And then we'll go back and adjust it later.
Sure.
Yeah, because they're always looking for that crack. They're always looking for that crack.
Sure, the chink in the armor.
Exactly. That's never going to stop, I believe. They're always going to try to find it, and when they find it, and if we don't recognize it and keep our armor solid, then catastrophe is just right around the corner.
It's inevitable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you must have experienced people in the past in this business that were either business partners or worked together as a couple, and it didn't work out so well, right? So what did you see in some of the commonalities in those cases where maybe it didn't work out so well that, you starting off, you said, you know what, we're going to avoid these mistakes? Did you have a short list of things like that?
Yes, I've experienced that several times. I've been around people in the business that were married, that maybe, like you said earlier, maybe one spouse is the operations director or a support staff person, and then the other spouse is an advisor. And I think the biggest issue that I have always seen is not listening to the input of the other person, not taking the feelings and the ideas of the other person and basically bulldozing them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
It may last for a while, but it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
So I think really, Lindsey is just as important to our business as I am, because I guess you consider myself to be more of a lead advisor on the front end. But there's no way that I could do what I do on a daily basis without Lindsey. And you and I have had those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then I think
And
you can
vice
agree,
versa.
and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So if Lindsey has an idea, believe it or not, all of Lindsey's ideas aren't brilliant.
Yeah.
But
I think they are.
not only is she the funniest person she knows, she's also the smartest person she knows.
Yeah.
So even though that's the case, they're not all brilliant, nor are mine.
Right.
So when you disagree, though, more often than not, who trumps whom?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
That is a hard one.
It's pretty. Honestly, it's pretty equal.
Yeah, I would say.
I
pretty
may win
equal.
temporarily in some cases, or I say trump something temporarily, but it's only temporary.
You believe
Usually-
that? You
yeah,
feel
I
that
do.
one? Okay.
If you had to pick one, if President Biden passed a law that said you need to tell me, one person has the authority to trump the other with business decisions, and that happens, 51% of the time instead of 49, who would that be?
I mean, I think it's me. I think I trump a lot of what he says. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because he believes and I've proven myself over and over again, and with the workload that Nathan has and the dynamic that we have, that a lot of times I win.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I was going to say just the opposite. I was going to say it was me. So when you have that dynamic,
Okay, so
then
that's
something
interesting.
must be going pretty well. Because I
Yeah.
would honestly say that would be me
Okay.
in that case.
Yeah,
So if we both feel that way, we must be doing something right.
that's
Good job.
right. All right, good.
There you go. So you trump. So you both have trumping ability, depending upon what the topic is. How about comfort zones? Sometimes there's a comfort zone because one person's more aggressive than the other, one's more conservative or worried about spending money than the other. How does that balance out between the two of you? Because that's another place too. Sometimes couples at work could maybe not always agree.
I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm the CFO. So most big money purchases or expenditures usually get cleared. We discuss those first beforehand.
They just kind of go.
And they kind of come my direction. Any changes in processes or procedures or
business
marketing
type of
and
stuff.
business type of stuff usually kind of naturally carries over to you. But that's a good point. I don't know.
It's a good question.
So I know. So you're pretty even on. You're both pretty aggressive. You're both very growth oriented.
That's true.
And I guess where I was going with this is I perceive you to be a little bit more conservative, only because you've got to deal with. Yeah, I know you're shaking your head. I know. It's because you have to deal with the logistics. It's easy for Nathan to say, okay, let's open up 2 more offices and hire some people, and then waltz in the conference room with the next 8 clients for the day, right?
Yeah.
But you're the one who's got to put all that together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to deal with the logistics more. So it's easy to be the visionary when you don't. And trust me, I know it's easy to be the visionary when you don't have to worry about the logistics.
But that's the funny thing about it is we're both visionaries.
I know.
So it depends on the subject. Now, if I'm talking about going out and opening up another office in Huntsville or Bowling Green or something of that nature, then Lindsey kind of takes pause. But she's a lot more aggressive than I am.
In some ways, I know.
In some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important just to, we sit down and we talk about it and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the direction we need to go. Can we do it? How fast can we do it? Can we get it done yesterday? Or is this something that's going to take a while?
Right.
And how long is it going to be before you catch up?
Yeah.
Or vice
Vice versa.
Or you've done that same thing with me with some processes where it's like, okay, Nathan, we are changing all these processes, and how fast can you get caught up on this?
Well, the best story was when a couple times you're without an appointment setter and you do a lot of marketing, so you need somebody on the phone booking appointments. So you'd fill his calendar up to like 10 o'clock at night. And I remember telling you, laughing, going, you don't like him very much, do you? You don't want to spend any time together. You'd have him in the office cracking the whip for 14 hours a day.
He wanted a full schedule, Dave, so I delivered a full schedule.
I asked for a full schedule, and that's what I got. So I've learned to specify.
It was my interpretation of a full schedule.
Absolutely.
So,
it's like,
yeah.
how many appointments can I put on Nathan's schedule before he passes out in the evening?
Yeah, there we go.
So now, okay, we talked about the office. So who usually trumps whom at home when it comes to household decisions?
That's, I would say, fairly easy. At home, we really try to make decisions together. I don't really feel that there's any kind of trumping one another on many decisions.
It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Well, either you guys are a really, really great couple, or you're totally full of crap, because I'm feeling like this is one of these questions that comes out like, well, what I want is world peace. You know, it's like
Lindsey just won a beauty contest, and she wants world peace.
I feel like, I get my way a lot. We talk through a lot of things on, the home side. He gets his way a lot of times. It's all about give and take.
Yeah, of course.
So, I don't know.
We have older children, Dave, and this is not our first rodeo. So
Right.
what we've learned is to pick our battles, and there's some things that Lindsey wants to do, and it's just whether I agree or not, it's not worth the struggle.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it really that relevant
Yeah.
to have to trump someone?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. It depends on the subject.
Okay.
And so, and Lindsey's the same way. She's like, okay.
It's like, if that's what he wants,
does this
okay,
really matter?
fine. It's not
And
relevant to me.
No big
fine.
deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I honestly say, it's not, we're not perfect. We don't have a perfect relationship. Everything's not peaches and cream all the time.
Right.
But we have figured out a way just to say, you know what?
Yeah, but at the same time, our dynamic is 90% business, 10% home. So we only have about 10% of our life that is really a personal life, because
During the week.
Right, or in totality, really.
Pretty much.
You
when you own a
so
business.
because we're in growth mode, so we've really dedicated a lot of our time to our business, and so we have just a small percentage of our time that we would need to confront that.
Yeah.
And that could change.
So
change
ask
down
us
the
in
road.
20 years, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or maybe 10.
we'll revisit it every 5
Let's
years or
do
so.
it.
Exactly. So
Let's do it.
ask us in 20 years when we're retired and we don't have all this business stuff going on. Then you can come back and ask us that question, and you might get a totally different answer.
So very good point. All right, final thoughts, you guys. Final thoughts, advice for anyone that's watching right now, that's listening, that their spouse or significant other is in the business, or they're considering bringing that person in the business. Best advice that you can give.
It is absolutely fantastic, as long as you can do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There's nothing else like it.
it's pretty amazing.
I wouldn't do it another way.
You'll get bloodied up and some bruises along the way, but if you really enjoy the person that you're building a life with and building a business with, and just clear communication, just constantly communicating with them, being on the same page with them. It's give and take, of course, but for us, we were on the same page a lot from the beginning. So for us, it was just a natural progression, and checking in with each other because we care about each other, and it's not all just business. So that's kind of
Compromise is important.
Right.
Being willing to compromise.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be stubborn and hard-headed all the time, it's probably not going to work out very well. But just being willing to compromise, being willing to listen to each other, listen to the other person's point of view. Because as I said earlier, there is a common denominator there. If there are two people, you want to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So what's better than that?
at least you never have to worry about the loyalty. That's the best part of it.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess what the 3 C's: communication, clarity, and compromise. You said, correct?
Compromise. That's right.
Communication, clarity, and compromise. I love it. So, hey, thank you for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you've helped a lot of folks out there who are in this situation and trying to make it better.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Great.
Dave.
Appreciate it.
All right, so a big thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Lindsey Cotter here today on the Elevated Advisor Podcast. I'm David Scranton, and I hope that you'll join us next week. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Elevated Advisor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your colleagues. If you would like to talk about elevating your financial firm, reach out to us at theelevatedadvisorpodcast.com. Investment advisory services offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Sound Income Strategies, LLC, and the Retirement Income Source, LLC, are associated